I had an angel of an uncle-in-law. Although he lived in the city of Suwon with my aunt and worked for Samsung, he was far from being like a nerd who never touched a dumbbell in his life. He was a tall, naturally athletic person, and me being basically addicted to the sport of basketball around the time of middle and high school. Playing one-on-one basketball against him was always a joy. I believe actually far more than playing one-on-one against other middle schoolers at the time, as he played a more physical post-up style of play compared to most other middle schoolers who just wanted to shoot threes, do crossovers, and just cry foul every time there's a slap on the wrist. So during my school summer break, I often used to visit him on Sundays, the only day when he did not work, played one-on-one basketball with him, and had dinner together. And while we were having dinner, this was back in 2007 by the way, the TV was on, and I just heard this really unique and attractive voice on television. The voice was, like I said, very unique. It was deep, but in a sophisticated kind of way that was not like a Shaq type raspy type of deepness. It was deep and charismatic in this discreet manner, but in a fashion that also sounded very gentle. So in other words, a voice that was truly one of a kind. And ever since that conversation, whenever I saw Lee Sun-Kyun on television or in the movies, steadily becoming a globally renowned actor, with him eventually starring in the film Parasite in 2019 that received wide international acclaim, I always fondly thought back to that particular conversation that I had with my uncle, imagining myself half jokingly telling him something in the lines of, "Hey uncle, remember that actor with the sexy voice? He's a really big deal now. He even got nominated for an international Emmy." But sadly, I can once again only imagine myself having such a conversation with my uncle, as he unfortunately passed away in 2015, with health complications related to insane amounts of overwork that was pressured upon him throughout his career. I'm not going to go into too much detail into this, as my aunt is still under a legal battle against Samsung for what happened. The whole situation just brings tears to our family, as the situation is basically in the lines of my aunt knowing that she cannot win a legal case against the almighty Samsung in the South Korean jurisdiction out of all places, but she continues to appeal, prolonging this case on for years, spending all her money on legal fees. But we can't stop her, because this is something that we cannot persuade her on a rational basis. She just cannot believe that her one and only husband is gone, and says that she knows that this legal battle against the corporation cannot bring him back, but believes that this is the least she can do for him. So on the international facade, everything about South Korea is all acclaims. This economically prosperous country led by globally competitive corporations such as Samsung, full of tall, aesthetically pleasing group of people. But on the inside, the actual, real-life individuals who compose the nation are in dire pain. Not some first world problem type of pain in the lines of, "I don't know what to do with my life, my passive-aggressive coworker is being a pain in the ass, I cannot believe my boss is asking me to work overtime for an hour and go home at 6 p.m. Don't get us wrong, they are also legitimate sources of pain in their own right. But it is also realistically an exaggeration to claim that such sources of first world pain are taken to such an extreme extent, as it is often the case in South Korea, to the degree that it is literally life-ending, as in what happened with my uncle. But this is South Korea, the land of the absolute extreme. Lowest birth rate in the world? South Korea with a birth rate of 0.7, that's currently almost half that of Japan's 1.26. The highest rate of people making the decision to take their own lives out of all OECD nations, South Korea, nation with the highest per person percentage of plastic surgeries done, or people willing to literally put knives on their face due to society's extreme pressure to be visually pleasing and the desperate wish to no longer face the visceral, daily discrimination conducted against them for being physically unattractive, South Korea. Stressed about being forced to work overtime for additional 2 hours on a weekday and have to return home at 7 p.m. instead of 5? Have a look at my uncle, working 18 hours a day through Monday to Saturday for decades, and still silently peer pressured to show up to the office on Sunday morning until the lunch hours, meaning that his only time to relax throughout the week was literally 7 hours in aggregate between 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Sundays. But overwork, or kwarosa in Korean, is not the only extreme facet of South Korea that is leading to the demise of much of its population. For the lead actor Lee Sun-Kyun, it was the nation's extreme, nonsensical shame and cancel culture led by the South Korean media and the masses that left him basically no choice but to make the tragic decision to take his own life. Now, some may rightfully look at this and say, other nations, such as the US, have cancel culture as well. And that is indeed a correct statement. But the overarching message that we want to deliver through this video is not in the lines of confirming the existence or the non-existence of cancel culture across different nations. Our message is how while shame and cancel culture does indeed exist in many nations all around the world, rarely do you see a one that is as extreme and from a purely logical perspective, completely nonsensical, hypocritical, and egregiously selective as the one that exists in South Korea. Again, to the point that it often leaves no option for the cancelled individuals but to take their own lives, as done more than frequently by individuals in South Korea once the society has decided to point to them and say, let's cancel that guy now. So without further ado, let us dive into analyzing the main factors and elements that makes the shame and cancel culture of South Korea so intense in its degree, and how, despite some potential benefits, it is largely making life a living hell for many of its citizens, the type of hell created for the late actor Lee Sun-Kyun in the last few days of his life. The actor Lee Sun-Kyun has passed, but his works will stay with us forever. And upon hearing the news of Lee's passing, a flood of memories came back to me, such as my younger self watching Coffee Prince on TV with my late uncle back in 2007, and just wanting to take this time to watch some of his other works that he appeared in throughout his lifetime. So while searching for some of the movies in which he starred in, we were sad to find out that almost none of the movies starring Lee that are available on the South Korean Netflix are available in Netflix abroad due to geo-blocking other than Parasite. And we were especially disappointed to find out how this 2014 film, A Hard Day starring Lee Sun-Kyun as the leading actor, was not available on Netflix or other major streaming services in regions outside of South Korea, as only Netflix Korea currently has this movie streaming on the platform. This original film starring Lee Sun-Kyun back in 2014 was apparently so good that it eventually got remade into different versions in China, France, Philippines, and recently in 2023 in Japan as well. And it is once again tragic how we will never be able to witness such great acting ever again. Or if you're not into the heat type of crime films, how about the very last movie that was released before Lee Sun-Kyun passed away, Sleep?
새벽문 되면 쿵쾅거리는 소리가 들려서 어떨 때는 비명 소리도.
누가 들어왔어?
This movie has a 92% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and Helen and I have just watched this film a day ago on Netflix. Such a well-made movie with brilliant acting by both Lee Sun-Kyun and Jung Yoo-mi, with the horror film having kind of a A24 production type, Hereditary type feel to it in a Korean setting. So if you're a fan of Lee Sun-Kyun's work made throughout his life, you'd be sad to never be able to watch the last ever film starring Lee that we'll ever have. But then, how did Helen and I watch Sleep on Netflix when we are currently not in South Korea? The answer is CyberGhost VPN. Thanks to today's sponsor, CyberGhost VPN, all of us can now watch a large selection of movies starring the late actor Lee Sun-Kyun, such as A Hard Day and Sleep, by simply switching our IP address to South Korea using CyberGhost VPN with just a few simple clicks, which is what we did. And hey, if you sign up and don't like what they have to offer, then you'll get a 45-day full money-back guarantee if you sign up using the link in the description. And to add to that, CyberGhost protects you from hackers and malicious websites by transmitting your data through a secure encrypted tunnel, and with their strict no-logs policy, no one, including CyberGhost themselves, can know about your online activity. And with them having 9,000 servers in over 90 different countries with 38 million users, CyberGhost has one of the best VPN ratings on Trustpilot with over 20,000 reviews. This is one of the biggest reasons why we decided to take on CyberGhost as a sponsor, because there is no way that we'll endorse a product that we ourselves don't use and hand our trust over. And just one subscription allows you to add up to 7 devices, so it gives you a lot more flexibility regarding which device you want to use the service on. So sign up to CyberGhost VPN today using the link in the description to get VPN access for an 83% discount price of just around $2 a month, plus 4 months free to watch all the films of the late actor Lee Sun-Kyun that are unavailable in your home countries, as well as protect your data and valuable personal information online, all with a 45-day full money-back guarantee. Let us ask you a question. Have you never effed up in your life? Not even to the smallest, slightest of F-ups. And I believe for most of us, the answer to that question is a resounding no. All of us are prone to making some mistakes throughout our lives. But then, does this mean that all the F-ups conducted by different individuals in our society should be unconditionally condoned for the reason that all of us are prone to making mistakes and that no one is perfect? And the answer to this question is also an adamant no. For example, let's say that a man has been dumped by his girlfriend of 8 months. The man is emotionally shook and anger takes him over. And at this moment, he is in a very vulnerable mental state. A mental state that's very, very conducive to effing up in some way or another. So after a few rounds of whiskey, the guy sends a vow message to his now ex-girlfriend, calling her all kinds of names, threatens and swears at her multiple times. Technically, the guy has now officially effed up. It is completely normal for couples, especially for couples that has dated for under a year, to break up if things don't work out, and an individual who's in a relationship has all the right in the world to break up with their partner if things do not work out one way or another. In essence, no individual should be forced to stay in a relationship, especially if not yet married, with a pure sense of duty or oftentimes fear. And in that sense, the ex-girlfriend had all the right in the world to break up with her boyfriend, and in no way, shape or form deserved all the swearing and threatening that was thrown at her by her ex-boyfriend just because she decided to end the relationship. But at the same time, given that the man genuinely, and we cannot emphasize this point enough, as if his apology was not genuine, this indicates that he has the potential to eventually do something that is much worse than the verbal swearing and threatening. But again, given that he genuinely apologizes to his ex-girlfriend for what he has done and means it, and we can clearly observe from his conduct after the incident that he knows that he legitimately effed up and actually has taken this as an opportunity to learn from the mistakes and grow into a more mature, responsible and morally upright older individual for the rest of his life, then does this man still deserve to be shamed and cancelled forever, as in literally until the day that he dies, in the neighborhood or the city that he has lived his entire life in, where the members of the neighborhood or the city all knows who he is, or in the case of celebrities, on a national scale? Now, some Karen type being may indeed say that yes, the guy still does deserve to be ostracized, shamed and humiliated by the society until the very day that he passes. But for us, and we hope for you guys as well, we believe that the guy deserves a second chance at a relationship. A second chance to meet the love of his life, not commit the same mistakes and F-ups in which he has conducted in his younger past, and have a happy family with loving wife and kids on an eventual basis. But let us take a few steps back and go back to the stage in time when he was just dumped by his girlfriend and was drunk and angry over what happened. Now in scenario 2, he still technically F's up after being dumped, but this time in a very different way. Instead of sending a vow message filled with curses to his ex-girlfriend, he visits his ex-girlfriend's apartment during the midnight hours, silently enters into her room and brutally makes her quote-unquote unalive. Now, it absolutely does not matter just how much he genuinely apologizes to his now deceased ex-girlfriend and to her devastated family members. The guy deserves to be known around the neighborhood for the legitimate threat that he is to other people's safety, and has absolutely no one but himself to blame when the society decides to shame and call him out on a public basis, permanently, until the very day that he dies. As after all, he's a brutal murderer responsible for taking away the life of a human being. In both scenario 1 and 2, the guy on both instances have technically effed up. But then why not shame and cancel the man on scenario 1 while doing so beyond doubt in scenario 2? We believe all of us know the answer to this question. And the answer is that while the man has technically effed up in both scenario 1 and scenario 2, the sheer degree or the severity of the extent in which he has effed up is drastically different in the two scenarios. And answers to social questions, such as whether it is justifiable to shame or cancel an individual from society for the public good, can often be a tricky question with no definitive, clear-cut answer. The answer to social questions never comes to us in the conclusive, absolute sense of 1 + 1 = 2 or the boiling point of water. This means that regardless of what kind of answer the society may come up with in order to deal with the issue, some who may disagree with the answer or have their interests aligned to the other side can always come up with a form of argument against it, and most oftentimes they do. Thus the reason why you see people argue against one another all the time when it comes to issues regarding the social sciences such as politics or economics, while people rarely argue against one another about whether the earth is round or flat unless you're Kyrie. So while there is no clear, absolute, beyond questionable answer regarding just exactly when an individual should be publicly shamed and cancelled by the society for an act in which they have committed, the answer tends to lie somewhere around the middle, as it seems to be the case for most social questions. To elaborate, we are not fans of the types of people on one end of the extreme regarding their stance on cancel culture, and that is the type of people who condone, legitimize, and make excuses for any type of negative and socially destructive behavior. If you spend enough time online, we believe you're more than well versed about such individuals and have seen plenty of them in the comment section of various videos. An unethical act or sometimes even a downright crime of the most heinous kind, such as rape, is committed, and these people are out there making arguments such as, "We all make mistakes. Are you perfect? Have you never made a mistake in your life? So leave the molester alone." And it is partly because of such people that serial child molesters, such as Johnny Kitagawa, was left condoned in the society for 7 years in Japan. Japan has historically been very much susceptible to such a line of extreme tolerance in selected circumstances, or in a sense, defeatism in the thought form of shogunai, or it is what it is, stop fussing over it. So there are still plentiful of people in Japan who defend Johnny Kitagawa in the lines of, Johnny Kitagawa himself is a victim of homosexual abuse that was conducted onto him during his youth by the members of his Buddhist temple, which subsequently turned him into a demon from his past trauma from youth. And we all share our own demons as well, so leave him alone. And yes, many of us do indeed suffer from trauma from the past, especially from childhood, and suffer from our own demons. But at the same time, all of us are also firmly committed every single day of our lives to not let ourselves be victims of our past trauma. For instance, we believe many of us may have been a victim of physical violence by our fathers during childhood. But are we going around beating up our kids and justify it because we're also beaten by our fathers when we were young? No, we do not. So such people on one extreme end of the stance towards cancel culture, which is that no one should be called out as none of us are perfect and thus cannot point the wrong of anyone for anything, is fundamentally wrong. As controversial as this may sound to the amoralists and the extreme tolerators, there is a reason as to why shame and cancel culture has existed in various countries around the world in one form or another. And that is that it serves a fundamental function in society, warning the members of the society that certain acts that harms the collective well-being of the members of the community, such as rape and murder, are not going to be tolerated, and that they and their families will be called out very publicly, shamed and ostracized by the society if they are to commit such acts. So if it is not their good heart and moral integrity that prevents them from committing the most heinous of acts, then they will not conduct it, at least due to fear. So Japan tends to suffer from the problem of often hiding the most heinous of F-ups of downright crime as much as possible, even if the crime is as evil as molesting thousands of minors for more than 70 years by one individual that more than deserves to be publicly called out, to say the least. Especially when so many individuals in the country already knew about it, with there being 2 court trials regarding the case, as well as books exposing Kitagawa's abuse of minors, literally reaching bestseller status across the nation. And then there's South Korea on the polar end of the extreme to Japan. In the case of Lee Sun-Kyun, he did not assault thousands of people as in the case of John Kitagawa. In fact, he did not force anyone into a sexual relationship. But he did technically F up though. And that is how he unfortunately let hormones get the better of him and seems to have gotten into an inappropriate relationship with a hostess who worked in the night industry, despite the fact that Lee was a husband and father of 2 kids. But then again, to the polar opposite of Japan, the South Korean media reported the most minute, the most private of phone call recordings and details between Lee and the female hostess, which was subsequently heard by every single person in South Korea. That was to embarrass and humiliate Lee Sun-Kyun for the rest of his life on a national scale. Not done by some type of tabloid, paparazzi yellow journalists, mind you. The very national broadcaster of South Korea, that's the equivalent of UK's BBC, that's operated with people's tax money, the Korean Broadcasting System, or the KBS, led the way in all of this. On November 24, 2023, in their KBS 9 o'clock news, which is by far the most symbolic news of the nation, that the most number of South Koreans have historically watched for decades ever since the introduction of television in South Korea, publicized this most private of private phone call conducted between Lee Sun-Kyun and the bar hostess, where Lee, in his charming voice, confesses his love to the bar hostess. To quote Lee's exact words in the phone call that was heard all around the country of South Korea on the night of November 24, 2023, he tells the hostess to quote, "I really love you a lot. Do you know that?" Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? What is actually going on in South Korea? Yes, Lee Sun-Kyun did mess up. Let's not get that wrong. He messed up by going to a shady bar, meet a hostess, and confess his love to a hostess while his wife and kids were back home. So we are not at all saying that what he has done here is right, and there is again no doubt that he has indeed effed up. But then, what does the confession of love of Lee Sun-Kyun to a night establishment hostess that was conducted in the most private of settings, which has absolutely nothing to do with the supposed drug allegations against him, in which he tested negative 3 times by the way, have any business being on the 9 o'clock KBS news? Again, not some tabloid or cable channel news, but the most watched news of the entire nation of South Korea, where millions of people watch on a daily basis. And there are so many thoughts storming in my head right now that I frankly do not know where to start with this explanation. And this is especially hard to explain, as it is really hard to deliver the cultural norms and mass tendencies of the Korean people to a non-Korean person. So let us try our best. Us South Koreans even describe our nation as a nation filled with a bunch of zombies. Zombie, in a historical context, was a social class during the Joseon dynasty of intellectuals who placed large importance on maintaining high sense of morality and ethics. Now that in and of itself sounds good, and not all zombies from back in the days were bad people. But the modern interpretation, or at least how we typically use the word zombie in modern-day South Korea, is quite negative. So when the people of the current South Korean society utilize the word zombie, it is under the meaning of a person who solely focuses on pointing out the wrong of others, regardless of the objective degree of the wrong committed by that person, as oftentimes these zombies cannot care less about the actual wrongful act committed by the other person, but just want to be in that position of being able to criticize the other person from a quote-unquote higher moral ground and derive joy and a sense of moral superiority out of it. And perhaps some of our subscribers who are watching this video right now living in the US may think, our country is filled with a bunch of zombies too, they are called Karens. But my friend, you have never lived in South Korea. Let us explain. Kobe Bryant was arrested for assault back in 2003. He admitted to having intercourse with the alleged victim, but stated that it was consensual. Now, this is where the need to rationally evaluate the degree or the severity of the unethical behavior or crime committed by the called out individual comes into play. Yes, Kobe did technically mess up. Whether the act was consensual or not, Kobe was married to Vanessa Bryant at the time and just had his first daughter, Natalia, earlier the same year in 2003. But then let us objectively evaluate whether Kobe now deserves to be cancelled from the sport of basketball and be labeled as a cheater and a rapist, with people whispering behind his back, rapist, wherever he goes for the rest of his life. Was Kobe genuinely apologetic to the victim, to his wife, and to his daughters? Yes, he was.
For making a mistake of adultery. And I'm so sorry. Having to put you through this, having to put our family through this.
When Kobe released a statement to his attorney, there was no victim blaming in the lines of, "that woman is lying." He genuinely apologized to the young woman, expressing his honest sense of worry towards the type of pain in which she had to endure in the year in which all of this occurred, as well as to her parents and to the rest of her family members. Kobe apologized to his family, including to his wife Vanessa, and since then clearly seemed to be a changed man who has learned from the mistakes of his younger self. There were no more accusations of assault against him until the day that he passed away on January 26, 2020 from a tragic helicopter accident, with him being a proud husband and a loving father to his 4 daughters. And because of this, Kobe was rightfully not forced to give up everything that he worked so hard upon throughout his entire life, which in his case was the sport of basketball. He was not coerced to retire from the NBA and went on to achieve the highest accolades of basketball, such as several NBA championships, as well as being the MVP of the league in 2008. From a financial standpoint, he did lose some endorsements with brands such as McDonald's, but the other main endorsements that he had, such as the ones with Nike, Coca-Cola, and Spalding, still remained strong. And most of all, he was able to sign a $136 million 7-year contract with the LA Lakers after the SSL case, which all suggests that while not completely unaffected, Kobe, based on the objective evaluation of the degree of crime in which he has committed, which was not like the one in the likes of Harvey Weinstein of malicious serial assault done potentially thousands of times to multiple victims throughout a multiple decade time span, but one single instance of course that may or may not have been consensual, and his genuine stance of remorse towards the victim without victim blaming, as well as sincerely apologizing to his wife and family, was able to revitalize his career, and most of all, still be given the second opportunity in life to be a good husband and father, in which he very much was until the day that he died. But now, imagine Kobe Bryant being a South Korean, and all of this unfolded in South Korea rather than in the US. If you're a South Korean watching this video right now, you know exactly what would have happened. An accusation of rape against you while you are married, when you just had your first daughter only a couple of months ago, and with a woman who was only 19 years old at the time, you would have been cancelled to the very core of your being if this ever happened to you in South Korea. It is highly likely that you had to retire from basketball. And if in one way or another, you somehow clung onto the contract that you had with your team, there is absolutely no way that you can maintain any of your brand endorsements. I mean, look at what happened to Lee Sun-Kyun prior to his death. all of the upcoming movies and dramas in which he starred in were postponed indefinitely, as well as advertisers effectively cancelling him from their domains and hurriedly expiring existing contracts just based on the accusations alone, when absolutely nothing has been proven yet. And this was not a case of assault, murder, or anything of that nature, just mere accusations of smoking weed, where once again he tested negative 3 times in all of the police investigations. But then again, in South Korea, the land of the zombies, or the land of so many people who judge and chastise others for not living a life that's equivalent of a person practicing monastic asceticism, while being as lenient as can be when it comes to judging their own lives, the accusations of potential drug use or some few $100,000 blackmail done by some night establishment workers was by far from being the main reason of despair and hopelessness for Lee Sun-Kyun, in which he saw absolutely no escape from, at least in this lifetime. Let us explain. If he tested positive and was convicted guilty of drug use, then the media and the masses of South Korea would have forever judged and chastised him as this drug addict, cheater, and a pervert who did marijuana and ketamine along with a hostess inside her house and made love to this night establishment hostess while his wife was tucking his kids to sleep. If he endured through this and did not take his own life, continued to test negative as seen from the 3 tests done on him while he was still alive, and was ultimately given a verdict of not guilty on the drug charges, this still does not matter at all in South Korea. The media and the people would have just continued with the perennial finger pointing, judging, and bullying, and label him until the day that he died as a cheater and a pervert who confessed his love to a bar hostess with his wife and kids back home, took ED pills given by the bar hostess inside their home in order to perform better with the bar women in bed, while again his wife was tucking his kids to sleep. He goes to a parent-teacher conference. All the parents are side-glancing him with that judgmental, condescending look given by an individual clearly thinks of him or herself to be above the other person and whispering behind his back. Again, if he was convicted guilty of drug use as a quote-unquote drug addict, cheater, and a pervert, and if he was not guilty of drug use, then nonetheless just take out the drug addict part and judge him as a cheater degenerate who goes around confessing his love to night establishment hostesses, and a pervert who took ED pills to perform better with the bar hostess, all with his wife back home. His 2 sons eventually grow old enough to be in high school, and some kids at school tell Lee's 2 sons, "Hey, remember how your dad is a weirdo who goes around confessing his love to sex workers with his sweet little voice with your mom crying back home?" Now, some may rightfully see all of this and say, what really is all this big fuss about Lee confessing his love to the hostess? He effed up once and was probably drunk at the time. This is not something that justifies him being bullied on a national scale and received the biggest public shaming possible in South Korea by having a recorded love confession to a sex worker heard all around the nation on the KBS 9 o'clock news. But then again, the South Korean mass psychology functions on a fundamentally different basis to that of other nations around the world, such as the US. The people in South Korea are especially more judgmental and critical when the negative rumor or allegations against you are sex-related, as in regarding cheating and infidelity. In fact, this mass tendency is so prevalent in South Korea that we even have a term to describe this, in which it is called 내로남불, that can be translated in English as, when I do it is romance, when you do it is infidelity. And we guess that not much further elaboration is required on the term, as it literally means as it is. South Korea, by the way, is by far from being a country where husbands and wives are all utterly faithful to each other throughout eternity. According to Attorney Shin, a divorce lawyer based in South Korea has the #1 divorce rate in all of Asia, with her saying that throughout her time as a divorce lawyer, the reason of infidelity was the 2nd most common reason for divorce. So needless to say, the vast majority of South Koreans are no saints themselves, and in no shape or form are at a moral high ground that gives them the right to judge, chastise, and humiliate Lee to a degree that is the modern-day equivalent of stoning him to death. Again, after the rational evaluation of the degree of the matter, which is that this is the first and only instance of Lee Sun-Kyun effing up and cheating on his wife, how there was no non-consensual physical act such as assault involved in Lee's history with the bar hostess, and how he genuinely apologized and repented for his acts, he did not deserve the national scale shaming that was conducted onto him, which made it impossible for Lee to look at his wife, kids, and family straight in the eye until the day that he died. Again, in a country such as the US, as in how Kobe apologized to his wife Vanessa and was forgiven, an individual who has effed up once in his life with a case of infidelity can still make things right and be given a second chance in society with his head up high. But not in South Korea, again, especially if it's sex-related, as in the case of infidelity, with the existence of all the Confucian zombies of South Korea, who are so eager to shame and cancel the other person while having absolutely no desire to objectively assess the degree or severity of the actual act conducted by the targeted individual and evaluate whether this individual really does deserve to be sent to Narak. Sending to Narak, by the way, literally means sending someone to hell, which is how people describe canceling someone from society in South Korea. Notice how the vocabulary used for canceling someone from society differs in its degree between South Korea and the Western nations. In the West, it is called canceling someone, as in cancel or erase someone from their ability to exercise freedom of speech and take away some of the authority and power in which they had before in their ability to yield influence and have a voice in society. In South Korea, the vocabulary used when canceling someone literally means sending to hell, which partly explains why just so many people, mostly public figures and celebrities, but not all, make the tragic decision, as in the case of Lee Sun-Kyun, to take their own life. So although we are also not fans of Japan's extreme tolerance stance and the extreme sense of hesitancy towards calling out indecent acts that oftentimes more than deserves calling out, and the reluctance to cancel individuals who, based on the objective evaluation of what they have done, are in a position that more than justifies being cancelled from society and in many cases sent straight to a lifetime in prison, South Korea's polar opposite extreme of quote-unquote we don't give a F about what they did, whether the accusations are eventually proven as true or not, we just don't care. The allegations and the fact that they have popped up in our cancel radar is enough to send them to Narak. So let's excavate the most private and embarrassing aspects about their lives and broadcast it on the very national broadcast of the country itself in the KBS 9 o'clock news that is by far the most watched news segment of the entire country, and shame, humiliate, and cancel the target on a perennial basis to the point that they can never recover, at least in this lifetime. So while it is a trend these days to conduct negative social commentary on issues regarding the United States, and many are indeed more than deserved, what we can still agree upon is that the cancel or call-out culture in the US still seems to possess at least more common sense and have an inclination to apply more basic logic and objectivity compared to that of South Korea regarding the decision of whether or not to cancel the individual, and if made the decision to cancel, then to what degree. Kobe Bryant and Harvey Weinstein were both technically arrested for sexual assault, but one was not cancelled from society and given a second chance, while the other, more than deservedly, was cancelled from Hollywood as well as being sent rightfully to prison. Why? Because although both assault cases in their very technicality, there is a night and day difference of the severity and maliciousness of the acts conducted between the two. So one is rightfully given a second chance, while the other is rightfully cancelled or erased from the society for good. Again, far from saying that the US is a perfect nation of any kind where justice is always upheld, the higher authorities of the US who allegedly visited the Epstein Island are still yet to be called out and prosecuted. But then again, compared to the complete shitshow that is the South Korean media, with their zero journalistic integrity and any sense of ethics towards what should be reported and what not, and the nation's netizens or the masses, with their zero desire to take the time to rationally evaluate the degree of the cancelable act or crime committed by the targeted individual before going all in to cancel them, as well as with their sheer 내로남불 hypocrisy, with their singular focus on sending the cancelled target to Narak or to hell, it seems that at least as of current, South Korea has a form of cancel culture that is one of the most, if not the most toxic cancel culture in the whole world. That's it for today's video, guys. We are sad that such a video had to be made in the first place, but then again, this is a message that we believe had to be delivered, and we hope that this video can contribute to the increase in worldwide awareness of South Korea's current shame and cancel culture that is just problematic to the most highest degree, and help prevent the future occurrence of similar personal tragedies as the one that had to be faced by the late actor Lee Sun-Kyun. And please don't forget to check out our sponsor CyberGhost VPN, who really allows us in being able to create content such as the one of today's video. Click the link in the description to get the special discount that CyberGhost VPN promised to give to our channel subscribers. We really did also check this out, by the way, and the price and the number of free months given do really change quite a bit based on whether you sign up to CyberGhost VPN using our link or not using it by just going straight into the website. So please enjoy all the benefits of the service and watch all the films of the late actor Lee Sun-Kyun that are geoblocked, as well as protect your precious data and personal information. All practically risk-free as well, with their 45-day money-back guarantee. So with that said, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Age Analysis.